What's good? It's your boy Fannon. All right, man, I cannot believe I'm saying this. I actually listened to a great conversation about the Errol Spence Jr. Terrence Crawford fight the conversation was between Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith, which tells me that there is a lot of pressure on Bob Arum to make that fight between Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. Stephen A. Smith actually sounded halfway intelligent talking about boxing, and Max Kellerman, one of his better moments lately. And so let me cover that. But before I do, I want to welcome you back to the channel, subscribers. If you're not subscribed, so hit subscribe and hit the bell icon so you can be notified when we release more videos. And also when we do our live streams, which we do Monday through Friday in the mornings, and on Saturday, OG Boxing Talk. Also check out the Patreon. We got new stuff up there. All right, so Stephen A. Smith predicted chooses Errol Spence Jr. and Max Kellerman pick Terrence Crawford. Both of them are essentially saying it's a 50-50 fight. But the amount of attention being given to that fight from the two of them really lets me know why Bob Arum is so desperate and so wild and out there talking about trying to make the fight and putting the blame on Al Heyman for not making the fight. But Stephen A. Smith, I was impressed. Stephen A. Smith said that he talked about the size of Errol Spence Jr. and the boxing ability of Errol Spence Jr. and that how he just pretty much thought that it was such a close fight. And I could relate to what the guy said, man, because he likened it to the situation between Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. and Pernell Whitaker, and a time when Magic Johnson was asked about it. And Magic Johnson said, man, Pernell's my guy. Or no, excuse me. I think he said Julio Cesar Chavez. Oh no, Pernell's my guy, but Julio Cesar Chavez is, man, that dude is really, really tough. So God dog, man, I hate even having to try to pick him. It's just a really, really hard situation. But then he said, I thought that Errol Spence should have basically said he thought Errol Spence should have knocked out Mikey Garcia, and he was surprised that Errol Spence didn't knock out Mikey Garcia. So if you have Terrence Crawford move up, who brings more to the table than Mikey Garcia, that, wouldn't you think that means that Errol Spence will go the distance with Terrence Crawford? Then Max Kellerman said that he thought it was a 50-50 pick'em fight, but he was leaning towards Terrence Crawford for a very funny reason, which I agree with it, but because he said that Terrence Crawford he said he has the boxing skill. He's, one of the best guys at switching stances since Marvin Hagler. I'm not sure if I really agree with that. I think Terrence Crawford stays in orthodox. Stays in southpaw the vast majority of the time he fights. But, that's a point of contention I have with a lot of people. I'm in the minority on that, so it is what it is. But then he talked about the meanness of Terrence Crawford and saying that how mean a fighter that Terrence Crawford is and how Terrence Crawford wants to go in and hurt you. So then Stephen A. Smith said, well, hold on, man, then wouldn't that mean that you got to explain to me then, but why would you say that Mikey Garcia didn't, since Mikey Garcia didn't get knocked out by Errol Spence, then wouldn't that mean Terrence Crawford, that would be more than a 50-50 fight? Max Kellerman explained what was obvious, and I agree with it, that Mikey Garcia went into survival mode after round 6. I think Mikey Garcia went into survival mode after round 2. But, hey man, difference of opinions exist. Reasonable difference of opinions exist. But Kellerman talked about how Crawford was too mean for Errol Spence. And see, this is where I appreciated the conversation. I really did. Number one, Stephen A. Smith was being deferential to Max Kellerman, and he should be. It was clear that Stephen A. Smith doesn't want to be hanging out there in the wind, because that's not a sport that he really, really pays attention to. His ability to talk about it for a very long period of time, sounding educated is really, really tough. But, it's not that he really doesn't have the ability to do that, but he knows to stay within his safety zone. Max Kellerman is obvious from his years of covering boxing is, much more agile in having that conversation. So Stephen A. Smith deferred to him. All in all, really great conversation. I enjoyed it. And I think to see that conversation taking place about boxing in the welterweight division is an excellent thing, because First Take is one of the biggest sports shows that there is on TV. And it's also a lot more important, I do believe, much more important, that conversation, than it is than what the pound for pound list on ESPN says, right? Because, there's a lot of people upset that Lomachenko's number one pound for pound on ESPN's list. I thought he's already been that, though. Maybe I'm wrong, but because I don't really pay too much attention to ESPN's pound for pound list or Ring's pound for pound list, but I was pretty sure that was already the case with Lomachenko. But people are up in arms about it. I don't see how you could have Lomachenko there. But then again, I don't really put a lot of credence into their list at all. I think the most important thing in this is that for boxing, and definitely for the career of Errol Spence Jr., the career for Terrence Crawford, is that the conversation is taking place at all, which tells you that there's a lot of excitement in the welterweight division. There's a lot of excitement around Errol Spence, as a result, a lot of excitement around Terrence Crawford and the buildup of this fight. Now, I still don't think that Bob Arum wants to make the fight. But the question is whether or not Bob Arum, and I think this is something that Mark Cragel said in the coverage of the Terrence Crawford and Amir Khan fight. What Mark Cragel, who's a commentator there, said on that show, said that it could very well be a case where there's so much money in the fight and so much interest that the networks want to make that happen, right? And so the networks involved in that are Fox and ESPN. And the desire to combine those two things might be there if the fight is big enough. I don't know if it's a case where it's going to get big enough to make Fox want to give up potentially give up three or four major events in order to jump to the end and make the Terrence Crawford fight. But we'll see. As far as what their argument was, the thing that stands out for me, but again, I really respected the conversation. I enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was an educated conversation, which is a little bit different than you often get in mainstream boxing conversations. But the thing that for me, that Max Kellerman pointed to as a strength for Mikey Garcia was that he was, mean. That to me is the thing that makes me worry the most about the fight for Terrence Crawford is the tendency to be aggressive and to go for the knockout and to really take the fight to the other guy, because that's what winds up leaving holes. And when you're with a guy like of the quality of an Errol Spence, whose punches are that straight, that firm, and has that type of punch output, I think that's the reason, or a situation where your strength can really be turned into a weakness. But, regardless, man, I respect the conversation. I thought that it was absolutely good. It was absolutely a pleasure to listen to, man. It was no, not usual ridiculous, but I guess the occasional, all too often, but occasional stuff that comes out of Max Kellerman's mouth, related to pound for pound Lomachenko and how close the line is between Lomachenko and Terrence Crawford. Oh man, I just don't buy that nonsense at all. But I thought that was a fair assessment of the fight. And man, it's a situation that I can live with. And I certainly hope to see the fight happening. I hope that the conversation with this taking place on ESPN between Max and Stephen A. Smith is a sign of, you know, the growing popularity of both of the fighters and the magnitude of the fight, because I think that that's really good for boxing. So anyway, it is what it is, and with that, I'm out. Peace.